Here we go. Hey, and welcome to another episode of Under the Hood. Today, I am very excited to host my good friend, Bryan Hymel, tenor extraordinaire of kind of all the French and Italian stuff, but just he's an incredible guy. So let's see if we can find him and bring him in here. Bryan, are you with us? Let's see. Here we go. There we go.
There
Hey,
we are.
man.
Yo,
Here we
buddy, how
are.
you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Same
Let's.
here.
I'm going to go over to my Facebook page. Feel free to share this on your profile as well. Just want to make sure we get as many folks in the you know in the feed as possible. So I don't want anybody to miss out on the good stuff. Here we
Absolutely.
go. Share. Putting that over on my fan page. Share to a page. Um, yeah, there we go. Now at least people can hopefully tune in and ask questions if you need. If you feel so inclined, we
Absolutely.
absolutely encourage you to type in some questions. So anyway, Bryan, where are you these days? Are you in New Orleans? Yeah.
So yeah, I'm in New Orleans. And it's hot, very hot, 100.
Yeah, yeah.
As I know Houston, I'm sure is.
Swamp
Uh,
City, man.
yeah, but it's fine. The kids are getting ready to start school virtually, and I am gearing up. Thankfully, I have still this concerts in Zurich. It was supposed to be Vespri Siciliani, but then it was a concert version, and now it's just a Verdi gala. So just learning some fun stuff, like you suggested, the Trovatore Trio, which is awesome.
Good stuff, right?
It's more of a showcase for the baritone, which is great. I'm happy to just sing a little bit, and then just soprano and I just kind of do some other stuff, and it's awesome. See
Oh,
Simon there. Hey,
Simon
buddy.
O'Neill. Simon O'Neill's tuned in from the South. That's my terrible New Zealand accent. I can't. I
It's quite a
can't do
lineup
that.
this month, though. It's quite a lineup this month of the tenor
Well,
trio.
yeah. I mean,
Hats
what
off to
was
you for that.
I? Well, listen. I feel very, very fortunate that somewhere along the way I got to meet not only a great group of people, but also an insanely level of talented friends. And so when it came, this idea kind of came to me, I was just like, well, this would be great. I'll just talk to all my friends. And so I've been able to have a pretty great lineup, which is really, really cool. Well, you mentioned New Orleans. You're from there, yeah? You're born and raised in New Orleans.
I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was here and I did my undergraduate here. Then I did a little bit of work and then realized like I wasn't really ready. I guess so. Yeah, about 24, 25, I think is when I moved to, when I was those ages, when I moved to New York. And I think that's when we met because I had started studying with Steve Smith. And then you and I met at Aspen
Aspen.
in
That's
'03.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, summer of
'03.
2003. That's where the
Just yesterday.
bromance began.
Just yesterday.
Yesterday. All right. Well, let's slow that down and zoom in a
Yeah.
little bit on those.
All
So,
right.
you grew up in New Orleans, and you did you always know that you were interested in music? I mean, that's a musical town if I've ever been to one.
Yeah,
Um,
indeed.
did you
Indeed.
just you just like pop out with like a trumpet in one hand and playing the piano with the other and like jam to the jazz tunes? I mean, when did that sort of start to take over for you?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I guess like from what I remember, when we would go to church, the organ and the organist was actually kind of in the congregation, so it's not up on the altar or anything. So you could go sit right next to the guy who was playing, and I
Oh
just
wow.
was fascinated with the music. And my mom and dad would say like, "Oh, whenever the music started, you perked up and you were looking around." And so they just took me over there, and they started sitting there for church. And so I would just sit there and just watch the guy play. And that guy was later to become my piano teacher, my choir director, my voice teacher, the godfather to our second daughter, Drew
Oh my.
Montague, dear, dear friend of mine.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've met
Just a
Drew.
great guy. Yeah, you have.
So
Uh,
he was the organist at the church from way back. Wow, I had no
yeah,
idea.
so right. So the church and school was all one kind of thing. And so with him being the music director at the church, he was also not the music teacher, but he was the
Hmm.
choir teacher and the piano teacher. And then the lady who did band, whose name is Joni Keller, she did the like general music classes and also directed the choir. So yeah, so we had an amazing program. She was, you know, band. So I in fourth grade, that's when you could start everything, right? And I wanted to do music. I wanted to play in the band. I wanted to play saxophone, but my dad was like, "Well, we don't have a saxophone. What we have is a trumpet. So if you want to play that, you're more than welcome to do that."
There you go.
My grandfather played it, so we got his old cornet out of the attic and got it fixed up, and I loved doing that.
Oh, wow.
And I would really I wanted to take piano lessons, obviously from just watching the organist and all
Right.
that stuff, and so yeah, so I did that, and then I remember like we were outside after school one day, kind of just running around the playground, and somebody came over and they were like, "Hey, do you want to audition for the choir?" And I was like, "Not really, no." And they were like,
Not really.
"Well, hey, Javier."
Hey, Javi.
And so he was like, they were like, "Well, this like," I'm like, "Who's doing it? Like, who's singing?" And they're like, "Well, it's pretty much like 60 girls and we got 3 guys." I was like, "I
Wait
bet
a
yeah,
minute.
I'll give it a shot."
That
I'll
sounds
give
like
it
all right odds for me.
so I went and did it, and that was fine. And then about a year after that, Drew started a boy choir. Hey, Chad. Well,
Hey, Chad.
It's like an Aspen reunion here.
No kidding. This is great.
And so yeah, so we did that, and we did the boy choir thing, and
This is still elementary years.
it's still Emory, so about fifth or sixth grade, so about
Yeah.
10 years old. And yeah, so I mean, did a lot of that's how kind of how I got into singing, and it was fun, and it was really it was really great. And then let's see, so I was doing trumpet, I was doing piano, and doing all that, and they were like, "You should really just pick one of these," and I was like, This, my mom was even like, she's like, "He's only in elementary school. Just let him do what he wants. We're not, going for the Olympics yet here."
Right.
And so it was time to go to high school.
Yeah.
And I went to the Jesuit school that's here in New Orleans. They had a really strong band program. And I had been taking trumpet lessons with that band director before going to school there. So I knew him.
Okay.
And they did a lot of really elaborate, I guess to say, is musical theater stuff.
Oh.
And so I did that, and unfortunately, there wasn't a choir at Jesuit. In fact, there was a philosophy professor. He was a doctorate, or he had his doctorate, and he was teaching at high school. Which I was like, "Why don't you go somewhere else?" He was like, "No, this is what I like doing. My
Yeah.
son's at school here. It's great." I was like, "Awesome." So he loved singing, and so he's just like didn't get paid for it. He was like, "I'm gonna start a choir." And so he started a choir. We would meet like 3 times a week or twice a week in the morning and do that. So singing, my voice changed, I guess, when I was like 13. But by that point, I was already getting in, like I was heavy into band and trumpet.
So that's like 8th grade, I guess. And so.
Yeah, that's when, we started at high school in 8th grade at that time here.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were at a private Catholic school for like kindergarten through 7th grade, I guess.
No, the whole thing actually. Every school I've been to was Catholic school. I mean, nothing. It wasn't
Oh, but it was.
particularly because it was Catholic. It also was not particularly because it's not Catholic. It's just the Catholic schools are really strong here in New Orleans, and the public schools are a bit of hit or miss.
Okay.
Definitely the high school like prep schools are almost all Catholic, or they're private and they cost like 3 times as much as that was.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Great. And then Loyola, which is also a Jesuit school. Just again, it happened because of the teacher. That's why I ended up going and picking that. But I got braces. I was like, trumpet, that's over. Okay. My voice changed. And so I was concentrating on piano. And I wasn't really singing a lot. Then once I couldn't play trumpet anymore with the braces stuff, I wasn't doing that. So that's when I started doing the musical theater stuff. And that's kind of where I found my chest voice. You know what I mean? Like before singing in boy choir, it's all like falsetto, and my voice was bigger and it was just louder than the other kids. And so I were like, okay, we got to try and blend here a little bit. So it's all things like learn, like kind of being, just discouraging me from actually really singing on support and singing fully and all the stuff that I would later learn.
Right.
That's kind of really what you need for
Right.
singing. So so I did that, and then I remember I went to see Drew again And I think I was singing like Sento nel Cuore or something, like just kind of, it's junior year, trying to get my voice in shape to audition for colleges to get scholarship, or even if it's just gonna be a choir.
So wait, so junior year of high school.
Yeah,
And were you
correct.
taking any kind of private voice lessons at that time, or
No,
you were involved in the musical theater program at that school and that was
right.
it?
Yep, and yeah, and doing piano lessons. I mean, I always did piano lessons.
From
But
Drew.
no, at that point, he kind of passed me on to somebody who was like more like, she taught at the university, which is
Oh,
she
okay,
was just
okay,
kind of passed
okay,
me on.
okay. But then
And
you went back to Drew to prepare to help. You were going to ask him to help you prepare for college auditions.
right, and I was not going to study singing. I was going to study probably piano, because I want to be a conductor. I want to be a Broadway conductor, because with the trumpet stuff and the theater stuff, I liked all that, and just combining everything. I could play piano well enough to play for rehearsals.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to do. And so at this lesson, I sing. It's like, we go through the whole thing. We warm up, sing Santa Nocori, we work on it, and like at the end, I was like, listen, there's something I want to kind of show you. I don't know what it is, but it's more like this voice that I kind of use on stage, because you got to project, and it's.
Right.
And so I sang for him a scale from like a C to like a high C, which I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I
And
didn't even know
you
at the
were
time.
what, 16 at this point?
I was 17, yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
you're like, oh yeah, you need a high C, no problem.
Well, I didn't even the term high C meant nothing to me at that point. Like, it meant
Okay.
more on the trumpet than it did on voice as a tenor, for sure.
I hear you. I hear you. Okay.
And he was like, "Ooh, yeah, we should explore that." And I think that's the way a lot of people find their voices, at least their operatic voice.
Sure.
It's like you can kind of make this out. And it's from listening to, my grandma used to put on Mario Lanza records of like Because and Be My Love and Oh Carrie Ann, hello.
Oh, I'm not even looking at the chat. I'm such an idiot.
I know,
Oh,
I
Mike Mays, he's demanding
Mike Mays.
he's demanding a musical theater story. And Carrie Ann Matheson, oh my gosh, I miss her so much.
Oh my gosh. I remember good times with Mike Mays in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama. We were doing Faust there a bunch of years ago. I've come across him and I've seen Megan, but too long, man. It's been too
Yeah,
long.
it's been way too long.
Anyways, so yeah, so we did that. I showed him that voice, and then he was like, all right, well, I'm not going to give you something crazy, but let's look at O del mio dolce ardor, which, it has some ornaments that kind of go up, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it was like, like went to an A flat, and then I threw in a B flat in there. And so I used that and Every Valley from Messiah
Yes,
to audition for Loyola and Eastman, that's kind of a reach, right? Like, to just go like, oh, here's my hometown place, and I'm going to go to the Eastman School of Music, which I only knew about because Drew did his master's there,
Okay.
and my conducting teacher in high school. So I went half a day to Jesuit for my last 2 years, and then I went to an arts high school for piano, like from say 12 to 5, and we
Okay.
did a bit of conducting, and we did all kind of stuff there. Theory, like when I
That's
started.
amazing that
I know, I
exists.
forget all this because it was so long ago, but like I started theory class. I started in theory 4 as a freshman because I had already tested out of all the theory classes.
That's
Uh,
incredible. I mean, like to have that type of opportunity at such a young age to where, I mean, what's funny is like we haven't even started talking about like when you started singing and taking formal voice lessons. Like
yeah,
every bit of musical sort of fundamentals that you had were from which, God, I wish we could all kind of have that experience where it's all
sure.
based in the actual theory where you're learning the key signatures with piano and you're learning to play an instrument. So, the discipline, let's say the overall musicianship, it was so
Right.
ingrained without even thinking about singing stuff,
I mean, certainly I'm very lucky in that sense
Yeah,
because, first off, my parents are not musicians. They appreciate, but like the level, like their musical sophistication is like Neil Diamond, which is
sure.
awesome.
Yeah,
I
there's
love it.
nothing wrong with, Neil
But
Diamond.
certainly, they were not like, you're going to take piano lessons and you're going to do this. It's just once I started taking piano lessons and Drew recognized that I had an aptitude for it, he just kept throwing stuff at me. He was like, wow, you want to try that? Let's do that. And sometimes I would pick off a piano piece that was a bit more than I could chew at the time, but I'd work
Right.
through there and then I'd put it away and then I'd come back. Anyway, the NOCA, New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, um, had a voice program, but like I said, I was in the piano program, and it's an amazing school. Started by the Marsalis family patriarch who just passed
Wow.
COVID, unfortunately.
Ugh.
But it was just a great place, and we were thrown into like master class, like Saturday performance class. Like it was the jazz guys next to the classical singers with the instrumentalists and the string players. It was, and we all had to do choir too. So let me tell you, some of these jazzers trying to sing Messiah and Elijah, that was something to behold.
That's awesome.
But
But
anyway,
again,
let's fast forward. So I
yeah.
got to do the auditions. I got a full scholarship to both Eastman and Loyola, and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to
Now
do.
this was for piano or
Oh,
for.
this was singing.
So okay, so what switch happened where you were like, I'm not going to go to college to pursue piano. I'm going to go to college to pursue singing.
I think it's when they said your talent for singing is more rare than your talent for piano, or your voice, I should say, because at that point I didn't know anything about technique, and so they're just like, your voice is is special enough that we're going to give you full scholarship, knowing that you've had about 8 voice lessons.
Wow.
And that's literally what happened. And I got the thing from Eastman, which I remember I got a call before I even got the letter. And I just was like, really? Like this was such a reach. It was as much of a chance to like see Eastman, take a trip. My mom came and Drew came. We all went up there. We saw some of his old buddies from the faculty. I did my audition, and they were like, that was really impressive. All right, great. We'll talk to you soon. And I think I heard back 2 weeks later. And then I just didn't think I thought I would get into Eastman maybe, but I wouldn't be able to afford it. And Loyola, although it wasn't cheap, it was certainly not a conservatory price. And so
Right.
when I got the offers for both places, I was like, oh, well, this is not how I expected this to go. So I talked to Drew.
Because you got a full ride from both?
From both, yeah.
Wow.
I really just planned on going to Loyola at that point.
Yeah,
Like,
it's around the corner. Might as well.
had a great church job where I was making a lot of money playing weddings and funerals and everything, and directing the choir and playing all the masses. And I was like, for me at that time, being a Broadway conductor was so much of a reach that having a career in singing was like just not even anywhere to be found. It just wasn't there.
Huh. Okay. And as you were going to school for singing,
yeah,
did you still have that aspiration of, well, I'm going to do this. This is great. It's paying for my education, but one day I'm going to be in the podium conducting on Broadway. Like, is that still what you wanted to do?
I'd say like after my first year, and I was introduced through my first teacher, Phil Fromeyer at Loyola, to the idea of technique in singing. I became hooked with that. And the idea, because I remember at the time, like, I could sing, but it wasn't really consistent. And I remember there were times where I could only sing for like an hour, maybe 3 times a week, because it was so hard on my throat. Like part of it was the way I was making the sound. And the other part of it was I just was sick a lot. I had really bad allergy problems. So my nose was always running. I was sneezing a lot. And like, it just, yeah. But after the first, so while I was an undergrad, Phil was teaching at Aspen interim, I think, after someone retired and before they hired, oh gosh, I can't even remember who it was at this point. But so he was teaching those 2 summers. So he's like, come with me out to Aspen, and we can continue our lessons. You probably get a scholarship, and do it. So I worked my butt off playing weddings and stuff and saved the money, and then went out there and studied with him. And it was at that time in '98 that I did the competition in Aspen, and I was one of 3 winners. And so here I am at like, I guess it was 18, maybe 19. It was right.
This was the summer between your first and second year in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went there and I won. And like, so, we're talking, Russell Thomas was in that competition, actually. Lots of other people who I know are still, in the business, were just happy to be there. I mean, Aspen was a great place.
Yeah.
And so by winning that competition and beating other people from Juilliard and Eastman and other places, I was like, okay, wait a second. Like, I need to really take this seriously.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I think I just reckoned, I mean, that was, because like going to Loyola it's not a conservatory. So there weren't that level of people who were not just the level of talent, but also the ones who were like, no, I'm going to go practice because I need to get this done. I'm not going to go drinking or whatever. I mean,
right.
I watched a lot of people flunk out of college here, unfortunately. But so yeah, and it was at that point that I was like, okay. And so we worked really hard. Phil was so generous. I mean, he would often give me like 3 lessons a week. He never charged me.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And he just was great. He's a mentor, wonderful mentor. He taught me, I think, so much yes, about singing, but also about just like having an artistic outlook on life and everything that you do. And he was a philosopher and a writer. And his book, actually, we're doing his book launch tomorrow or Sunday, since he's passed. But it was just really great. And I learned a lot about support. He liked a very frontal forward placement,
Yeah.
and so that, and also the interpretation. Like not having never sung anything solo in another language, it's just that's a lot. It's jumping into the deep end. And he just helped me kind of break down and understand. Okay, well, the words might be a little bit out of order, but that's just part of the language. So you say it this way, and you just you pick it and go. So it was wonderful. I mean, I really, lots of people can get a not great first teacher, and that causes a lot of problems down the road. But I
Sure.
was really lucky. In
Talk
that
to me a little
aspect.
bit about the difference in using your breath coming from a trumpet playing background to now you're singing. How if I mean, you mentioned that at first when you started singing, you could only sing for like an hour or whatever. Looking back on it, what were some of
And that
the
wasn't even every day. That was only a couple of times a week because I needed a day or two to recoup.
right? So
Uh, you
looking
know,
back on it, what do you think you were doing that was causing those issues?
I was just tight as hell. I mean, I was just tight as hell.
Muscling everything.
I mean, that's what made the sound impressive. I mean, I could use my choir voice, but it wasn't the impressive sound. Hey, Jan,
Hey,
it
Jan.
wasn't the impressive sound that was the Mario Lanza sound. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to an untrained ear, you think the only way you can make that sound is by going, ah,
Right.
And once you kind of learn how to figure out how you can make that sound, well, then you spend the rest of your life trying to not do it by doing that.
Right. Right.
And so, like, okay, there are a lot of similarities. I can say this because I just started. We're doing an exchange with a voice student who's here in New Orleans, and her husband is a professional trumpet player, and so we give
Oh.
her voice lessons, and he gives me trumpet lessons.
Oh, cool.
And so a lot is the same in the sense that all the tensions and everything that we are trying to get rid of for singing in your throat, your tongue, all that's the
Jaw.
same because you squeeze that when you're playing the trumpet, you get a squeezed, very not nice tone on like that comes out of the bell. Same thing, you want to relax more. You don't want to tense your lips, because that's the aperture. Okay, so your chords are that for singing, your lips are that for trumpet playing. You
Sure.
don't want tension in the lips themselves. You want a little bit in the corners. And essentially, you want the buzzing of the air to do the same. And I mean, a lot of the principles are the same. In moving between notes, you have to make sure that he likes to say, give a slight crescendo before you change. As it just encourages the air to keep moving so that when you press the valve, you don't get drag and that kind of, it just goes,
Right.
I think
Right.
Simon plays, he's got his Wagnerian
Horn.
tuba,
Yeah.
Wagnerian. So I know we got some fellow brass player love on here.
So I mean, I just think of it, and I mean, I played trumpet like in 6th and 7th grade. I'm not
Uh-huh.
bragging or anything. It was I was first chair for a little while. I think I
There
don't
you go.
know,
There you
but I will say that like the pressure, the air pressure, before the air meets the mouthpiece, let's say,
go.
and
Yeah.
I mean that's just from my memory, but I mean I imagine that's pretty different than the use of air, or maybe it was just because I was really a terrible trumpet player. And actually, when you play well, it's actually you want to be using your air as opposed to holding your breath.
Oh, for sure. I mean that is
Yeah,
without a doubt. But I mean, I the same thing. It's like I loved playing trumpet, and I was pretty talented and good at it. But Kaiser horn, there we go.
there it is.
But like no one ever, even in my trumpet lessons, it was more about like scales and etudes and fingering and
Hmm.
actually since he was a jazzer, we did a lot of like just trying to put on a tape with a blues track and you just try to improv over it. No technical kind of things,
Okay.
to that. And I wish that I had that even for technique for piano. I wish I had a teacher who would have really gone after technique. I know not every kid can take it, and especially a lot of like younger kids or even high school kids. It's like just learn your notes, play your scales,
Sure.
memorize your piece, show up, play your recital, and get
Show
your
up.
medal.
That's a big part of it. Is just showing up.
You know what I mean? So it's just like yeah, it's just that. But yeah, there are a lot of similarities. Sometimes I would take out my trumpet and I would play it first, and then when I would go to sing, I'm like, whew, I'm already warmed up because I got the air moving.
Yeah, yeah.
The blood is circulating here, so everything is kind of ready to go. In the end, it is a little bit different, and I'm not sure. Like, I mean, first of all, I can't. If I had a gig right now, well, the one in Zurich, I'm not bringing my trumpet with me so I can annoy my neighbors or the people in the hotel while I do it. But I am
Yeah.
taking advantage of this time to just get back in and to be able to do that and enjoy it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So jump forward a little bit. So you finish up your undergraduate at Loyola, and
Right.
then what? Didn't you win the Met competition like right out of Loyola, like when you were like 22 or something?
So I was a finalist,
Oh, you didn't win.
a
You're
national finalist in 2000. So
okay.
I was 19, or I was 20. I was 20, I think. I was like
20.
19
Okay.
when I did the first ones, and I was 20 when I did the other one.
Wow.
And I mean, obviously, my first teacher was a great teacher, or else that wouldn't have happened. But I just remember like sitting in the dressing room at the Met and just getting more and more and more nervous, feeling like I don't know enough to be here. I'm not confident enough in my own understanding of what I need to do in order to make this sound consistently come out well.
Hmm.
I just feel like I'm riding on talent, and I'm getting
Hmm.
this on talent and youth. And I think that was the case. I think that it was just like, okay, this guy's got a really special instrument. He works hard. He comes from a good teacher. Let's give him a shot. And I think in the end, I mean, I go back and I've listened to the tape of the broadcast, and I was like, whoa, yeah, I just was so nervous that and I was so cognizant of the reality that I could not make a sound easily. Like I
Hmm.
had to just like, again, it was such a forward kind of placement, and my tongue was really tight. I mean, that's when I got to Steve Smith. The whole idea of like the base of your tongue being loose was something I had never heard about before.
Right.
And I don't think Phil would say, "Oh yes, the base of your tongue should be tight." I just
No.
think that it's just not the way he thought about singing. He thought that by placing your voice here, it would try to illuminate a lot of the other um, technical
Issues.
issues. But
Yeah.
for me, that he was a baritone, a very dusky timbre, so singing very bright and forward balanced his voice out in a really nice way.
Hmm.
But my speaking voice is even like,
Right.
it's just like kind of whatever. So for me to sing that, I remember I went to sing for the Met for Galetha and somebody else, and like, if you keep singing like this, you're just going to be a comprimario tenor. You're going to be a goro. You're going to be this. And we've heard your voice over a number of years, and we know that there's more beauty in there. So you need to get
Hmm.
to a teacher who's gonna help you find that. And that's when she brought me to Steve Smith, or she wrote to Steve, and Steve said, yeah, great, have him come to Aspen. And that's when we met.
Okay. Yeah. So
And yeah,
that was so Steve was your next teacher after Phil.
yeah. I mean, there was Susan Ormont, was someone who was at Boston University who I worked with for a little while.
Hmm.
But what I needed kind of at that point was to go to a school, because I'd only had my undergrad. I was about 24, 25, and I needed the structure. I knew I needed more coaching. I know I
Yeah.
needed language work, uh, stagecraft, drama work, just all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to go to a school. And Boston, like, I think she was there at the time, and I think Morris Robinson maybe even went to the Boston Opera Institute before that.
That rings a
It
bell.
just didn't
Yeah.
work out. And so then Gay Letha was like, go to Steve. Steve was at Juilliard. And so I went to those summers in Aspen and auditioned for Juilliard. I think in total I auditioned for Juilliard 3 times. I got waitlisted every time. And so I was
Crazy.
like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. Um, and then after about 2 years, we said, okay, so like Steve's technique was kind of the opposite of what Phil was doing. Steve was more about the flow, not about placement of the voice so much. Just let it. You can't, let it ring, let it go where it
Well,
goes.
he talks a lot about how you refine the vowel is what determines the timbre of the sound. And so, he never talks about, in fact, he even says, the risk that you run with placement is getting stuck within that placement. And so the
Wow.
whole idea of spontaneity and allowing for the refinement of the vowel to allow for that change in resonance, I think
Oh yeah.
is
I mean, I think he's totally right. I understand so much of what he was trying to get me to understand at that time now, but at that time I just was like, I think it was because I was coming from just such an opposite end of the spectrum. You
right.
know, people like I remember Galitha again, and I love she's done so much for me, and I always have valued her honesty with me. I mean, it was not a lot of times it was not stuff I wanted to hear. But she told it to me because she wanted me to get better, not because she
Yeah.
wanted to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And so she said, I remember I was in the at the high school at Aspen singing for her. I don't think Carrie Ann played this one, but I remember Carrie Ann was there with us one year at Aspen.
Yeah.
And she was like, Bryan, you know, unfortunately, you have just lost that brilliant squealo that made that was your signature, the signature of your sound. I mean, that's what it was all about. You might have gained ease of singing,
Hmm.
but you've also sacrificed projection, brilliance, all this other kind of stuff. And so I just, the other thing that was, yeah, and I guess is about airflow is the difference. Like Steve was not so much about support, but the flow. And that was the first time that I started to play with the idea of letting the air be like siphoned out
Hmm.
or pulled out like a thread like this, as opposed to being pushed
Hmm.
by like, you know, because Phil was definitely like taking a breath and then breathe and then squeeze it in to let the air come out. You know, some people talk about they push out to let the air. I mean,
Hmm.
there's lots and lots of different ways
Yeah.
to
Christopher Dorn in our chat says I worked with. Oh wait, no, he was saying before. Marilyn Horn says breathe, support, project. Love that idea. Yeah. Well, if it were so easy, right? Just there's a few other things that go on. Carrie Ann says she didn't play that one.
Okay,
She
okay.
played a lot of them though. I think she played for mine when I was singing for Gaelic back then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so talk a little bit about that. So, what do you think uh, allowed, or well, didn't allow for, but sort of was the fault of her saying that you've lost all this ping and this resonance? Was it airflow based, and that you kind of had gotten off of your body, or what?
I think it was both. I think it was because the sound in her mind that she was used to hearing was very forward. It was
Right.
very bright. So Steve is the opposite of that,
Sure.
and with the airflow as opposed to the support, even if it's a quote quote pushed support, it's going to give you more of that squillo, brillante, whatever, just
Right.
not in a very I want to say unhealthy, but it's not. It's certainly in the easiest way. And you know, for me, I go back and I listen. I found some old videotapes and cleaning out stuff, and it was like me singing Alma Viva in English my junior year, and
Amazing.
it was like gently the dawn is breaking, and I was like, oh
Right.
my gosh, I can't listen to this because for me, I just know how tight that felt. I remember how tight that felt. I listened to it and I'm like, it's just nasal. It's not, there's no warmth. There's no, and without that, I also, I couldn't really what I would consider supported. I could push air against it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a supported that now like, okay, so when you know, after I left Steve, which kind of broke my heart, it broke my heart to leave all of my voice teachers because they were all so generous and
Yeah.
so sweet. But you know, there comes a point after if you're not making the progress that you need to, and other people in the business are saying, if you want to do this, you gotta make a change.
Oh yeah. You and me both,
You
man.
just kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
And so then Galitha again wrote to Bill Schumann, uh, who was teaching in New York and also at AVA, and she's like, "Listen, if you get an AVA, it's tuition free, so you're not going to be incurring any more debt." Because I had a lot of credit card debt after living 2 years in New York, and I was essentially living off of the savings that I'd made singing regional gigs,
Hmm.
and I was paying my rent and my voice lessons with cash, and everything else was going on a credit card. And in New York, you know how that can go.
I've lived it myself.
So I was ready to give up, and Galitha was like, "Listen, you owe it to yourself for one more shot." Bill Schumann is known as a tenor guru. He's got all these kids at AVA that James Valenti and Derek Taylor, Costello, all those guys were there
Hmm.
before I got there. And she was like, "Just go have a lesson with him, see what you think. Audition for AVA, and if you get in, then that's and it doesn't work out. Well, then hey, you'll be 30. You would have given it everything you got, and you can go back to New Orleans, and maybe you'll be a Broadway conductor. Who knows?"
Sure.
So I went there and clicked really well with Bill personally, as well as vocally. I would say for the first probably 3 4 months, he just said, "Forget all of the pieces that you've learned. I'm going to give you all new arias to learn. I don't want to put any habits in there. I don't want you to think technically because I can tell that you're so confused that
Yeah.
you just need to get back to your talent and your instinct. And he let me do that for about 3 or 4 months, rebuilt my self confidence because I was really broken at that time. I just thought, I left Loyola thinking there was all this promise ahead of me. And then the next 6 years was just, I was making it to the finals of the George London when I was 21.
Hmm.
And then at 24, I wouldn't make it to the finals. And I was
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I thought I sang better than I did 3 years ago.
Right.
But they didn't. So anyway, so I got to Bill, and after my confidence was rebuilt, and I got an AVA, we got there, and slowly he started to train the muscles of like the idea of your larynx going down, and this idea that if it goes down, it opens your throat. By opening your throat, you get more color, warmer. That's the scuro part.
Lengthening the vocal tract, essentially.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. And so the more I started to do that, the more I felt that I could then support. And by supporting, instead of like pinching or it just like wanting to pop up, the muscles were trained to stay down and meet that. And that was the idea of this apoggia. At least that's what Bill said, or that's what he explained it to me. It's like
Sure.
when your larynx kind of like goes just gently goes down against the air, that's the leaning part of apoggia, which also can say to place something
Sure.
upon, to translate. But then yeah, and that changed things completely. It gave my sound not the nasal sound anymore. I gained like huge stamina that I never had before that. Even with Steve, although I did find how to let go of a lot of stuff that was tiring me out, and quite frankly, I'm sure making my cords swell.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to just kind of work there, and I got to AVA, and I went to AVA for Bill. Once I was there, I realized that Bill is wonderful and amazing, and I wouldn't change anything. But you spend one 45-minute lesson with him all week, and then you spend all the rest of your time with the coaches. And the coaches at AVA are top notch. They really,
Yeah.
really are. I know there are a lot of great coaches out there, but to have so many good ones in one spot is really something. And especially
Special.
the maestro at AVA who conducts all the shows. I mean, he would tell stories about how his first job on music staff at La Scala was playing for Delmonico Tibaldi and Serafine conducting. He played rehearsal
Wow.
piano for that
Wow.
rehearsal. And he was there, I think, for almost 10 years. And he worked with Corelli, and he worked with, I mean, just all the
Everybody.
legends that were there and singing at the time. He was on music staff. That's what he did.
Wow.
I remember he told there was one time where he told Tibaldi that she was flat, and she was like, "You don't tell me that." Amazing.
It's like, well, this is not opinion. It's like that pitch needs. Nope.
Yeah. But I mean, Bill and Maestro, vocally speaking, are on the same page. They like this Corelli Pavarotti sound of the larynx being low, vowels being pure, and supported, and that was great because everybody had the same idea of the vocal picture we were going for. It's not like you go to one coach and they're like, it sounds a little back, or you go to another coach and they're like, oh, that's a little bit too much forward. And I'm like, how can you guys give me such varying different
I got to
feedback?
say, when I was at Juilliard, one of the amazing things about Juilliard is all of the different variety of coachings that you can have while you're there, because you
Yeah,
basically have the entire staff at the Met, you've got the entire staff at Juilliard, and
right,
you could, I was just actually talking about this the other day. For a French diction coaching, you could either have Tom Grubb, who literally wrote the book, you could have Denise Massé, or you could have Nico Castel, and
he
those
wrote
three,
a
they're
couple books.
those three people couldn't be more different in what it is
Right.
that they're looking for from a sound. And so, like you're saying, how incredible it must have been to have everybody on the same page with, like, yeah, this is what we're shooting for.
Yeah, I mean, there are pros and cons to both, right? But when you're trying to just figure out what your real voice is and how to use it, I think it's
Yeah,
very helpful to have that being reinforced instead of questioned. I want to
absolutely.
talk a little bit about like we were talking about. I just during this quarantine, well, anyway, even before the quarantine, I would take out the Tetrazzini and Caruso book, which is like a free iTunes download. It's like 30 pages of Tetrazzini talking to a writer, and then Caruso kind of talking too, but he's more focused on the exercises than the actual talking of like this kind of stuff, like what do you do
Right.
when you breathe, what's the position, what's the placement. And I just would read it, and every time I would read it every season, like on my vacation. Something different would, one time something about the breath would really strike me, and I would
Hmm.
go and take that away. And then the other time would be something about the tongue tension and this. And so I just thought it was a good way to kind of keep myself on track.
Yeah.
Once you start singing, it's very hard to get to see unless you're at the Met and you're in New York, you won't see Bill. And he's not so big on Skype or things. I mean, he's getting into it now, but
Yeah. We're kind of
before all
all
this COVID
forced.
stuff, we don't have a choice now.
Yeah.
So I just would kind of do that. And then I just picked up the Great Singers of Great Singing, and was just like, you can it's like having a conversation with Pavarotti, with Sutherland, with, Roberta Peters, and all these different guys. And you see Gedda, Corelli. Corelli's is amazing because it's super concise. The visualizations that he picks are like very understandable, like anybody could understand it. Like the idea of a water jet fountain, like a bubbler that you have in your pool that just shoots straight up and the bubbles over it. You can put a plastic ball on top of that, and that's how your voice or your larynx, however you want to speak of it, sits on that column of water. And it just keeps, it's continual, and so
Hmm.
the air has to continually keep going in order to keep the ball in the same spot. And it's just full of that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow. And then when we were talking about this yesterday, and you said about his other, Jerome Hines' other book, The Four Voices of Man, I'd heard about
Yeah.
it, but I hadn't,
Yeah.
just because I wanted to talk about the larynx stuff in particular, because that's what has made the biggest difference for my singing.
Mm.
As far as stamina and balancing out of the sound. I know my tendency, because like I'm strong, not just as my voice is strong, but like we're built the same. We're big guys.
Yeah.
We're strong. We can lift a lot of stuff. But as I've gotten older, it's gotten less easy. Actually, maybe not less easy, but it's taken me longer to recover, I should
Yeah.
say.
Well,
Uh,
let's say this. Well, my teacher Stephen King said the same thing when I came to him and I started having regular lessons with him. He said,
mhm.
"I don't understand how you were able to sing all this stuff." Because what I had realized is that I was basically muscling from here, without
Yeah,
really, like you said, using the efficiency of your breath and using your entire instrument, the lower torso being able to do the
yeah,
majority of the work instead of this getting so involved. And likewise, I was so thankful, though, to my time with Stephen Smith, who made it so clear to me that there is a separation of function between the jaw and the tongue and the larynx. And so they can be intertwined with muscle, but they can also be very separated, so that as we sing, we can find the freedom in that, so that the larynx can be relaxed and dropped low, so that the
right.
jaw can be hanging there like you're an idiot,
Yeah, no,
in a
no,
good
no.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that. Oh, hold on. I just see David's asking, "What's the name of the book with Corelli in it?" It's The Four
Oh,
Voices of Man, where he talks about Milocchi, and talk because actually, so Milocchi was Delmonico's teacher. Uh, Corelli took a couple of lessons with Milocchi and was like, "I can't do this." I think he just was like pushing down his larynx with too aggressive, probably just with the base of his tongue, just slamming it down and just
yeah.
supporting the hell out of it. And you can, for a little while, maybe make some impressive sounds by doing that. But Corelli said he did a lot of his studying with a student of Milocchi's, and that is where he did a lot of that.
Well, and
Um,
also, David, we were talking about great singers on great singing. You were talking
Right.
about the chapter of
Oh,
Corelli.
sorry. Yeah, exactly. Great singers and great singing. It's just Jerome Hines talking to Corelli. They're actually sitting in a Cadillac driving out to Atlantic City, probably going gamble. And he puts a tape recorder between them and just records it and then just writes. I mean, the other thing is with great singers and great singing is it's not a book cover to cover read. You just
You can
be
just
like,
read a
oh, I
certain
want to
chapter.
listen. I want to see what Regine Crespin said. What did Roberta Peters say? What did
Yeah.
it's so funny because oh gosh, well, Cheryl Milnes he gets pretty
He gets
technical.
pretty in depth.
Who's the other guy who I'm trying to think about right now? I can't believe it's escaping me, but he's like, I don't think you should write this book. I just want to go
Oh,
on
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
record
yeah.
saying that I think this is a horrible idea. but I'll talk to you anyway because you're my friend. And then there's another guy who like says he just goes in the corner. I think it's Louis Quilico. He's like,
Yeah,
I just stood in a corner or looked about 3 feet away from a wall and meditated until I could figure out how am I going to sing. I mean, there's so many different ways. Gedda's is really good. I have to say, Gedda, you know, probably as the tenor who was like the most graceful, easy, could pretty
elegant.
much do anything with his voice. I mean, it wasn't the biggest voice, but there's nothing I think that he couldn't have done
Sure.
as far as like stylistic. I mean, again, the only thing that he talks about, he also talks about. Everybody says the yawn, you know, as the position of feel. What does your larynx going down feel like? A yawn. What's tricky about a yawn is like there's like, well, it starts and then it gets bigger and then it opens and
Sure.
then it comes back down. So it's like at
Sure.
what point yawn? And I think everybody has to figure out and find which position feels most relaxed and natural because that's the point. It should be open but not forced open.
Right.
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 But Geta talks about the mask and not being nasal and making sure that the sound reflects here. And that's something that Corelli doesn't. I think probably because Corelli had a teacher who talked about forward and masky placement. He's very adamant against masky placement. So much so that there must be a reason more because you listen to Corelli and you're like, wow, that brings the hell out of it. I mean, he's clearly, even if he's not aiming for the mask, he's sure getting a lot of brilliance and sound
Sure.
in there. He used to talk about, so Bill uses this a lot. It's something called what he calls the Caruso box, which
Yeah.
I was like, this sounds crazy to me. But then again, it pops up in the Great Singers on Great Singing in Rosa Poncel's chapter where she says that she was having trouble with top. And Caruso was like, well, you're not stretching the back. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I think, you know, whether it's stretching the back or laryngeal tilt or mask or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
these are all ways to get yourself like to think about stretching your chords out so that as you sing higher, you're not trying to move as much mass as there is in the middle. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the passaggio is, right? How do you transition from your speaking regular kind of voice to the thinner mechanism that allows you to sing higher without squeezing, getting
Right.
tight, or pushing the hell out of it?
Yeah, exactly. So getting back to the time at AVA, how many years were you at AVA working exclusively with Bill before your career took off and then you were just singing all the time?
Right. So I was there for 3 years. And yeah. And so back at that time, they would allow you to go. It's a little bit different now. I started working with Neil Funkhauser,
Yeah.
my
Manager,
second,
as a manager.
as a manager. Yeah. My second year there. And then I was allowed to go and take auditions. They don't do that so much anymore. But that's how my career kind of started while I was still there. And I remember Neo put me up. He put me up for a NIOP, and like I got 5 job offers out of one NIOP, which I don't know many people who've gotten offers out of or actually gotten
So,
booked
so for
out of a
anyone who
NIOP.
doesn't know, NIOP is a thing that David Blackburn started with the New York International Opera Project, where all these companies from Europe come over to New York City and hear as a panel a variety of singers, and so you as the auditioner basically get to sing like 12 or 15 auditions with just one audition, right? You're singing for all these different companies. So I never knew that. You ended up getting like 5 contracts out of that gig? Out of that audition, I
Did.
mean?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
And so I did that. I remember. So my first thing in Europe was Rusalka at the Wexford Festival. It was I never sung anything in Czech. I didn't audition for it because well Neil was kind of infamous for having videos and then putting them up on YouTube. So
Yeah, yeah.
David Agler, who was at Wexford at the time, heard my videos and said, "I think he can do this. We'd love to have him if he's interested." I was like, "Well, I'll try." Okay. I mean, at that
Mhm.
point, it was a summer gig, so it didn't interfere with AVA. And so yeah, so I did that. And it was great. And there, Elaine Padmore, who used to be the director of opera at Covent Garden, heard me. Um, and I don't know, she set up an audition or she talked to Peter Katina, who's the casting director there. Um, so I did the Wexford thing, and then from that NIOP, I got Puritani in Greece.
Hmm.
And when I did the Puritani in Greece with Iglesias, my sweet Iglesias Gutierrez,
Oh,
um, she's so great.
she was
And
my Violetta for my Seattle Opera debut.
uh,
She's like the best. She's so great.
just love her. and she took such good care of me because I was sweating bullets. I mean, Puritani is hard for
Hmm.
anybody, but my voice is, I know they say that. I know Luciano did it, and he did transpose some of the higher stuff down in performance, but not in the recordings. But it was tough, and she carried me through that. Anyway, long story short, I sang it well enough to get offers from Covent Garden for like a Carmen, a cover of Werther, uh, oh, and Rusalka, and
Hmm.
Rusalka. So it's at that point. So I mean, essentially, although Neil had started working with me, a lot of things I didn't get. Like I had auditioned and I just didn't get them. But the European houses, I think, were more open to a different kind of sound
Hmm.
from a tenor because my sound. Some people think it's very Italian. Some people think it's anything but Italian. Italian. I don't know. But anyway, it is the sound that comes out, right?
Everybody's
And
got an opinion.
so I just was able to work more. I did Tosca in Bordeaux. I did, and that is an audition I think where the guy from Bordeaux was in New York, and I went and sang a live audition for him there.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how it went. And then I early on in my career, well, whenever it was, I just made a lot of debuts by jumping in for people. My La Scala debut was done that. I jumped in for Carmen for somebody who couldn't do it or got sick or something. My debut, although it wasn't my debut, I guess in London. Certainly, the Troyan in London kind of made a big splash because I'd been singing there, but that was a new production. It was supposed to
Yeah.
be Kaufman. It was all that. It just was DVD, all this jazz. So that got a lot of press, and then the Met thing, it was the same thing. So it became a kind of this like jumping in kind of thing, which I
Hmm.
knew at the time was risky, uh, because they're roles that although I knew Troyan before I went to Covent Garden, otherwise there would have been no time to learn it. I did it in Amsterdam.
Right. I remember
Uh,
that. I
I
remember that
just
production.
remember that it's like, okay, I was very understanding that my voice was not John Vicker's voice, or a lot. He's probably the most famous one for Troyan, right? And but again, the arguments were like, well, it is French music. It's not German.
Lyric. Yeah. Right.
It's not this. Just because they are going to do it this way, or if people have sung it that way, doesn't mean it's the only way they could be sung.
Sure.
So we took those chances, and it was a huge payoff. But the pressure and the schedule that came out of that was I just didn't anticipate it being as much as it was. Just like before I had kids, I thought I had this candle like handled and thought I was ready for it. And then you just have the kids and you realize like, wow, this never
Woo!
lets up. And I just never thought that I could go this long without sleeping or like, you know what I mean? It's just like, hey, Renee, I see Renee's over there too. And Carrie
Oh
Ann, I
yeah.
remember Carrie Ann sent me she took a video of my curtain call from the prompters box. So she was prompting that show and sent it to me. It was
Oh
so sweet.
wow.
And Susie was really wonderful as my colleague in that. And I mean, essentially, I had maybe 30 minutes with Fabio Luisi to talk tempo and 1 hour staging on Christmas Eve. And that was it. That was like, all
Wow.
right, you're ready
Well,
to
that's my
go.
birthday. That was a great birthday present for
Well,
me.
that's why I was able to make it through it, is because I had your birthday wishes.
There you go.
So anyway, so yeah, so it just anyway, just the point being is like sometimes you can sit in the studio and say, oh, this is my favorite, this is the role that was made for me, and this, and your teacher says you should do this and this and that and that. Well, if you can't get hired for it, or an opera company's not doing it, or the whatever, it's especially in these times, it's not an option. So you have to balance taking the offers that are out there. I think this is more for tenors and maybe baritones than it is for sopranos and mezzos, because that repertoire tends to be a little bit more straightforward. But like certainly all this high French stuff, nobody was doing it. Just like before Larry and Juan Diego, Rossini was like not like it is now.
Right. Right.
Without Joyce DiDonato and Juan Diego
Sure.
and Larry, you can't do it. And it was the same thing with the French stuff. But I realized that French stuff, although my voice was high and I could do it, the French, their technique was very different, like with the voix mix and stuff like this, and the way that the Italians were more um just kind of like traditional bel canto style. You
Sure.
sing a lot in a beautiful passaggio and you go up and hit a high note. Maybe it's Bellini, it's a really high note. French, like Guillaume Tell has 21 high C's in the role. I don't know how many
Wow.
Daughter of the Regiment has, but I don't think it's 21.
I don't think it's 21.
and the aria in Cabaletta has 11, I think.
Wow.
It's a different kind of high C. It's not that poor. I mean, they're just more. The orchestra is thicker, even though it's still Rossini. It's the last thing you wrote. It's
Right.
incredibly French in its chromaticism,
And what's
and
the tessitura like?
high as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, with 20 high Cs, it's like it's
Compare.
ridiculous.
I was trying to say comparatively to like Puccini or Donizetti or whatever. I
It's
mean,
not even comparable. I mean,
yeah.
there's a big, okay, so like Bohème has two high Cs for the tenor,
Right.
and they're both optional. Other than that, it's a B flat roll.
Right.
But it just is a different style. I mean, Donizetti would be closer to Rossini in that way, because at least with Donizetti, it's like more going towards that sing-songy, long legato
Sure.
kind of thing. And I don't know. We could talk forever about this, but I don't want to waste
Well, but
too
no,
much.
no. So my point is that you excel in that, and you were killing it, and everybody realized it, and so then you started singing tons of it, right?
Yeah, I started
And
singing
so, what
tons of
did technically where were you? In your sort of from where you had come from, and then you get you huge success with this Met Troyen, and then you get wrapped up into doing all the Robert le Diable and
Right.
the Berlioz and the Guillaume Tells and technically where did you find yourself?
Well, I found myself being able to do it, but again, like there's a difference between doing it twice and doing a run of 8. Um, and I started to realize, especially as I was traveling more and I was getting tired and stuff, that um, I just didn't feel like I was as connected to my air as I should. I still felt like I was pushing a little bit,
Mm,
I guess is what I'm
mm,
saying. And I just kind of couldn't figure out, because my voice was always high. My teachers often, like, not that we would neglect the middle and the warm up, but all the rep was focused on higher tessitura stuff.
mm-hmm.
And so in trying to learn how to sing that stuff, it just became, I could feel my voice like deepening as I was getting older. And I just was like, I felt like I had to artificially keep it high.
Hmm.
And I think that I did that by by not making my larynx go down so low. But
Mm-hmm.
by doing that, I felt like I was also sacrificing my like latency, if you will, is a term that's a buzzword now. How
Yeah.
efficient the air was in coming through. I felt like
Mm-hmm.
although it was there, it just had, like, I don't know, for some reason it wasn't working. This is so stupid, but I'm gonna have to find my charger, because of all the setup that I've got here. I've got 9% battery, and I don't want to lose you just when we're getting to the great stuff.
It's okay. All right.
Um, if I can't find it in 2 seconds, I'll just.
It's fine. It's fine. Well, I think a lot about what you were just talking about. I'm assuming you can still hear me.
I can hear
Um,
you.
yeah, that latency of breath is something that's so incredibly important to understand. That the like you were saying in the Corelli, this water bubbler with the cup or whatever sitting on top of it and having the air basically support that resistance. When you have, let's say, the beginning of phonation, I mean, all of this Italianate, bel canto technique goes back to the Manuel Garcia method of this idea of, he called it the coup de glotte, right? This sort of blow, of the glottis. And I think that had he said in the book Bel Canto by James Stark, they talk about, had he said caress of the glottis, it probably would have been far more accurate with what he actually intended. But if you have that closure in the glottis and you don't have the breath right there behind it fueling it, you can very easily start phonation with muscle alone and then let the air come later. And I think that almost over time encourages too much muscular involvement in the creation of tone, which added with a high laryngeal sort of lift, you get into some bad habits that are not going to allow for healthy longevity of singing.
Yeah, I mean, so like, so that was. I mean, people will say. I know a lot of people say everybody has an opinion about the rep and this and all this kind of stuff, and like, a lot of people thought Troyan was a bad idea. That's fine. I don't think Troyan was a bad. I mean, without Troyan, I wouldn't have the career that I've had for sure. Because it pushed up my Met debut by 4 years. I was supposed to,
Right.
or at least 3, because I was going to
You're
do.
doing Pinkerton, right?
Well, actually, I was first contract for a Bohème,
Oh.
and then so that was first, and then the Troyan happened, and then because that was a success, they fitted me in the Butterfly, which was the following season. Gosh, then we did something else. I think I did Bohem again the next season, or that was my first Bohem. I don't remember exactly the breakdown of how it went, but it was just without the Troyen, it just wouldn't have happened. And without the
Right.
Troyen in London, it wouldn't have happened at the Met. And without that one, and that was in Amsterdam, that wouldn't have happened either. You know what I mean? So it's like it's such a web of this kind of stuff, and I never thought, nor did my teacher ever, did Bill or any of my teachers ever think I was going to do like Les Troyens, and that would be such a staple.
Right.
But I mean, I guess the most important thing that I've kind of learned through that kind of stuff is that, you know, it's no secret that in the past couple of seasons I've had to cancel a lot.
Sure.
Some of that has been dealing with like depression, other kind of stuff like that. Some of it's been vocal. A lot of times they're kind of they spiral off of each other. But what I can say vocally from that is, so when I was at the last job that I felt really, really confident about was Les Veuves Siciliennes at Covent Garden, and it was the revival. So it was 4 years after we did it the first time, and that's a really long,
Didn't
hard,
you do like
difficult.
10 shows of that or something?
I can't even remember. I would love to forget everyone. No, I'm kidding. It's just hard as hell, and there's not that great of a payoff.
Yeah.
And also too, it's just like I was just trying to do too many things at once.
Right.
So after, I was scheduled, I did the Les Veuves Siciliennes at Covent Garden, and it went really well, and I felt good about it. And then I came back to do Cavalleria at Covent Garden, which was right after it. And Cavalleria, I had Cavalleria is a tricky role, right? There's kind of that just one big scene with Santuzza, that's the duet. Then there's Mama Qualvino, which I used for the competitions back in the day. So like I knew that, and I knew I was okay with that. And it's fine, but it's deceptively okay. So it was a double bill, right? And the tenor for
With Pagliacci.
Pagliacci was in some trouble or was sick. Or there was some reason that he just wasn't coming to rehearsals and stuff. And so I remember they were like, "Well, we're at the Sitzprobe for Cavalleria and Pagliacci, and there's no tenor for Pagliacci." And I'm like, "Well, I kind of know this." So
I've heard this a few times.
so they were like, "Well," I was like, "Give me a score and I'll do what I can."
Yeah.
And it was fun and it was fine. And what I realized is that although Pagliacci is a more dramatic role, I mean, he's angry a lot more of the time and more of a desperate hurt as opposed to, Turiddu is just pissed off because he wants to be with the other girl and he wants the other one to get but Pagliacci is like betrayed, heartbroken. It's like really deep, and his last aria is just, the words themselves are heartbreaking. But if you look at the words, and so the tessitura of that is lower. But I think that the orchestra is thicker for Cavalleria. All this to say that when having to sing more in the middle for the Pagliacci, I realized that I wasn't really fully supporting my middle voice. Like I would say the bottom octave from D to D.
Yeah.
It just like it was easy and it would speak, but it wasn't on the air. It wasn't connected. So that when I went up to the top, I'd have to like find a place to kind of like push the button for my support to kick in. And I'd have to hide it behind a consonant, or I'd have to hide it somewhere else, or else it wouldn't sound legato. I became very shrewd, but I was like, I don't want to be shrewd. I'd like to just do this the right way. And so in doing that, I found a way to support my middle, which essentially just opened up my throat and my sound. But then it kind of unbalanced my top, which had always been so easy that it wasn't even really something that we had to be like, oh, that's what you need to do and do it. It was just there. And all of a sudden, when it's not there anymore in the same way, and also I knew that the new way that I had found, this ease in the middle, I didn't want to sing that way for my lower part and then go back to squeeze the top out like I had essentially been doing forever. I mean, maybe it didn't sound that way, because even Irini would be like, it doesn't sound squeezed. It sounds like, brilliant or whatever, but it doesn't.
Irini, your beautiful wife, who's an amazing soprano, who you met at Covent Garden. Yeah. Okay. So
who's heard me sing a lot over the past 10 years that we've been together.
Yeah.
But now that it's grown, and now that I've kind of understand the way to get up there, I've just had to rebalance my top. And you and I, we talked about this, and whether it's speeding up the airflow or thinning out the chords, like what Gedda says, all these things just help to kind of, I don't know, I think of singing as like a combination lock, right? You got like four four digits that there
Digits.
were.
Yep.
One is breath, one is laryngeal position, one is like placement, if you will. Um,
Resonance.
yeah, resonance placement, and the other one is maybe like tongue and jaw stuff, right?
Hmm.
And if you got nine, you say your combination is 9999. If you got three nines, but you got one eight, still not going to unlock the lock.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what the balance of singing is about, right? You can check some of those boxes, but unless they're all in the right number and it's balanced and it unlocks, vibrato could be slow, vibrato could be too fast. You get hoarse after this. There's all ways that this tension can manifest itself. And then we haven't even gotten into the parts where you're like, okay, now that I can sing this pretty easily and pretty well, now I have to tend to be a character who's pissed off or being whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's why. I mean, again, not to harp on it, but Chris Spat talks about there was a time in her career in that Great Singers of Great Singing where she's like, I just forgot my vocal technique on purpose so I could just throw myself into the acting. And she's like, I was known for being a great actor, but it caused some problems
Took its toll.
that she then had to address. So,
Yeah. Well, as we should probably start to wrap it up, but
oh yeah, that's true.
we're at an hour five. This is, I mean,
Right,
that's the
right.
problem with talking friends. It's so easy to let it go. But
Yeah,
so you mentioned a little bit, like in these COVID times. I mean, everybody's lost work. I'm so glad for you that you're getting to go to Zurich. When do you go to Zurich?
September 5th, if everything goes right. I just got my
Okay.
visa
Oh,
on
good.
Tuesday, so at this point, it's been a lot of back and forth, but it's essentially the only job I have left this year. So that money
Yeah.
has to take us through, well, as long as it'll take us through. I mean, I hope that by halfway into 2021 or maybe the summer of 2021 we're going to be able to do stuff. I mean, I don't
I
know.
think
That's
it'll.
out of our whole that's out of our control.
Right, right. I think we rely on the powers that be to make excellent decisions so that we can go back to work, but we can go back in a safe way that's going to be, you know, uh, putting everybody in the right sort of mindset, but also, keeping everybody safe. But,
Yeah, I mean,
there's,
another so go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say we find ourselves in a different place. I mean, there's talk a little bit maybe about the differences between singing in America and singing in Europe. I mean, a lot of houses in Europe are starting to open. I mean, Lisette did a run of Traviatas in Madrid, with like an audience, and so different countries are allowing different types of public performances. Where here in America, I mean, we're completely shut down, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any opening anytime soon for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that, first off, they were ahead of us, right? They got the virus, 2 weeks to a month ahead of us. So they're 2 weeks to a month ahead of us before. But, with each country being able to control its own people and say this
Borders,
government says you got to do that, you got to control your border. It's just fewer people to deal with at one time. And so I think people just took it more seriously. And that, therefore, the numbers have just stayed down as far as I see. Here, things have just been a little bit trickier. People don't want to wear masks sometimes.
yeah,
People don't want to do this. I think everybody's got the point now, but it's a little bit too late. I mean, our numbers are already back up where they were when this all started. The only difference is we have PPP and or PPE.
PPE, right,
Freudian
right,
slip there. We have PPE for the hospitals, and the hospitals are just kind of ready to deal with this a little bit better.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, the world of opera between U.S. and Europe, it's like they're just like two separate planets. They're all in the universe of opera, but they're just two separate planets.
yeah, yeah.
Without getting too much into that, because we could do I'll talk another hour about that. But it's fun. It's funny because
Sure.
like the Americans think I'm too European, and the Europeans think I'm too American. Where I think I'm kind of somewhere in the I'm literally married to a Greek, and so my family is half European and half American. But that's the thing. There's the issue of all the languages. They think Americans, are either too lazy to learn them all, when they just don't realize that growing up here, you don't encounter those languages, and it's not a skill unless you're going to be an opera singer when you're learning these things in school.
Right.
There's no, or you're going to go into international business. I mean, it's so much. I watch my kids learning Greek and stuff a little bit with Irini, and it's like it's just so much easier for them to be able to do it. Me trying to learn French in high school was like, Dude,
Well,
that was bad.
it's considerably different when you're trying to learn a new language when you're a child, which is that's when it's supposed to be built in, right? That's when your brain
Right.
is just like, sure, throw it on me. I mean, I remember your girls telling me they were showing me how they could count to 10 in like Japanese and Greek and everything else. So yeah, I
I
mean,
can thank YouTube for that. I can thank YouTube for that. But yeah, it is true. They would just do that. And we have a friend who's Japanese who was like, it's like they have no accent whatsoever. And it's like, well, YouTube, that's it. That's all we
there
can
you
say.
go.
I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things that have come out from doing this.
Yeah,
But I mean, it is in this like digital age. I know we were talking a little bit before this about trying to figure out sound jack and Zam Kazam and all this other kind of stuff. At least we have the time where we're home. I mean, I spent more time with my kids than I have probably since they've been born, at least in
yeah,
one spot, and not having to balance that between rehearsals and everything else.
yeah.
And
Larry was saying last week, it's almost like we'll never have this time again. I mean, once
yeah,
it's kind of amazing that I don't want to. It's let's just say this: it's important to see the silver linings within these, bizarre times that we've had to deal with, and that's definitely one of them. The fact that we've been able to spend so much time with family, the fact that those who have had such demanding performance schedules, you have had an opportunity to rest and to rethink and to prepare for the future. I have been focused a lot on teaching, and it's like I have a friend, Jennifer Forney. I don't know if you know her, but like she's like building houses and like it's like they talked about the importance of acquiring other skills, and it's just like it's true. It's like you start
yeah,
to realize what other passions you have, and to perhaps then dive deeper
sure.
into the ones that you possess. So anyway, man, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with me on this.
Absolutely.
I'm
I've been
sure that.
looking forward to this for a while. I love you, buddy.
Oh, I love you too, man. This has been great, and we got to get together soon and sing some more Othello or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely, bud.
All right, brother. Well, have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, buddy.
All
See you
right,
soon.
thanks. Yeah.